So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the My D97 Superintendent Coffee. Today is September 30th, and I'm really delighted to see all of you here. So I'm going to turn the floor for some just brief introductions to Amanda while I take master of the waiting room admittance. So Amanda, I'm going to turn the floor over to you while you do the quick housekeeping, is going over the agenda and housekeeping, and then I can take it from there.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Kelley. And everyone can see my screen, I hope. It's like always hard to transition the slides and be managing the Zoom, so I appreciate your patience. Okay, hang on. Okay, there we go. Okay, so just wanted to provide a brief overview. First of all, my name is Amanda Siegfried. I am the Director of Communications for the district. I'm the one who sends all the emails that you get every week, so that's me. Just wanted to go over the agenda for today. We did kind of structure it because we had a large number of people sign up, and we just wanted to keep everything organized and make sure we're able to get through as much information as we can. So first of all, I'm going to, as soon as I'm able to get back into the chat, I'm going to drop in the sign-in. We do always try to keep a record of people who come to our community engagement events so that we can just make sure that we're planning additional outreach efforts to other parents and to follow up with you on anything that we may have missed. And then we're going to move into an introduction and kind of an overview of where we are from Dr. Kelley. This is really designed around some of the questions that we've received over the past week. So hopefully we're able to cover some ground there. And then we're going to open it up to you. We're going to be collecting questions again because there are so many people. We have the chat available if you want to put questions in there as you're seeing information, or if you came with questions. If you enter the question in the chat, I'll be monitoring that. And once we get to that section, I will go through the questions in order that they're received, and we'll try really hard to cover as much ground as we can. Anything that we don't cover, I will try to incorporate into additional communication, or we'll follow up with you directly if we need to. And then finally, we'll have just a really brief form just to get some feedback on how today's coffee went and to see how we can make improvements going forward. So let's see. So from here, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Kelley.
All right. So Amanda, I'm going to turn the waiting room over to you. So I'm going to close that out. Good morning, everyone. Can you go back to the introduction, Amanda? Because I do also want to thank you. I want to give just some context around this morning's coffee. It's one of the things that we typically would do if we were in person, with the exception of I would typically be out in one of the cafes here in the community. They have been in the past over at Buzz, sometimes at Live Cafe, and then just other places here in town. So as I'm watching the participation coming in, I have to tell you that even though we don't have the opportunity to be together in person, this virtual community chat, this is the largest attendance I've had yet. So these will be monthly conversations. I've been doing these monthly, informal chats with the community since my first year here. And I try to have, 1 month I'll do in the morning. So October, it will be in the evening, and so forth and so on. What we typically do is just I give some brief remarks around like what's happening in the district. And then the majority of the hour is just my listening. For today, we are going to do some Q&A. So the majority of this hour will be some question and answers, and then we will give you some next steps and also announce some important dates for more community conversations. So next slide, Amanda. So really briefly, and I'm going to watch the clock here because I really don't want to take more than 5 or 10 minutes for this portion. And then we're going to turn it over to you for me to take questions that you pose in the chat. Want to just give some highlights of where we've been. I think yesterday we officially crossed the 4-week mark for the 2020-21 school year. And just some highlights so far for trimester 1 is, listening to the community. One of the things that we heard from the spring concerns brought up regarding, the start of the school year was not every student had their own device. And also like the printed materials, parents wanted to see more printed materials. So we did use the CARES dollar, which were federal dollars that we received because of the pandemic. And a lot of those dollars we used not just to support our PPE and other cleaning supplies, but also to bring a technology. So we were able to distribute before the school year started to our K through 2nd grade students new devices. And we also did our first round of printed materials. And I believe many of the schools are making arrangements to deliver printed materials to you right now. We continue to distribute meals to any family in the Oak Park area. And we also introduced our anti-racist curricular. We're really focused this year in our district goal around supporting our teacher leaders of our teacher teams. And we're calling that process leading teacher teams. And we have expanded to support or further support our inclusive teaching practices, the expansion of our co-teaching classrooms across the district. We're supporting the leaders, mostly the administrators, deep study of universal design for learning, or UDL. And then finally, I just want to again publicly congratulate Amanda and her team of 1 for the district winning an award for excellence in communications for our My D97 weekly wrap-up newsletter, which you should be receiving every week. So I think the highlights though, or probably a lot of you are here today to talk about some questions that we have seen over the last week or so. So Amanda, if you can go to the next slide, I want to talk about the COVID-19 transition planning. And I'm just going to talk about it from the standpoint of what are we doing from the standpoint of some of the questions that we've seen. So the first question that I've seen is, what's going on with, we're seeing like a lot of different schools who are starting to communicate that they will be reopening in October or November. What's going on in District 97? So if you recall, this past Friday, we shared a communication with you, and the bottom of page 1, it contained this chart. And there had been questions regarding what metrics is the district using to help inform the decision of students going back. And the very last line that's like highlighted in green, it says stage 4, full in-person learning. So one of the questions, as I said, that has come up is, is D97 waiting for a vaccine before children can attend school again? So if you can go to the next slide, Amanda. We have been listening to the community, and I just want to say that the answer to the question, are we waiting for the vaccine? The answer to that question is no, we're not. However, I do think that the other part of the communication that went out on Friday that talked about a survey, I want to clarify that that survey is more of a questionnaire, and it's allowing us to gather information from our families for a variety of reasons. First, by October 2nd, by this Friday, each of you should have received a survey or a questionnaire from your schools. And that is being designed so that the schools, your building leadership team, can have a better understanding of what your remote learning experiences have been. In addition, and this is what the communication last Friday was referencing, in addition, we shared that we would be delivering a survey to all of our families, the district would, in early October. Now, the purpose of that questionnaire is to help us determine what your learning preferences are for your children. And that information will need to be shared directly with our building leaders because, and also with the district, because it will directly affect issues such as the implementation of our health and safety protocols, the staffing, scheduling, and things of that nature. Many of you have asked for, that the surveys be conducted by a third party, and that those results be, shared with that third party. But that information is actually helping us to inform our planning. So it would need to come to the district. And the purpose, again, is not, we're not collecting the information to inform which model we're moving forward with, but we're collecting the information so that we will know directly from you what you prefer to do. Do you prefer for your children to continue to remote learning, or do you prefer for your children to have some form of in-person? And we will use that data to help us plan for the move to stage 3. So next slide, Amanda. So going back to the metrics. So just going back to the metrics for a second, we also are using these metrics to guide our learning plans. So just want to kind of reiterate that stage 1, and that's like in that red section, that is like where we were as we were moving into late July, early August. And that is when the board did approve our using the remote only for this first trimester. I think that date was August the 11th. We are seeing, and I'm going to go to the next slide, Amanda. We are seeing some trends, which is allowing us to move into stage 2. And I also want to take a moment to just clarify a couple of points, because these have also been questions that have come up. One question is, well, it looks like if I use this metric for Oak Park, that we've been in stage 3 for some time. Why are we saying that we're just in stage 2? Well, we actually are using 2 sources of information. The first source of information is from using the Oak Park zip code. And that source of information is the weekly new cases rate per 100,000 population. It's very difficult to see on this slide, but what you can do if you go into the link in that document, and it takes you to the Northwestern COVID dashboard, you can put in the 3 zip codes for Oak Park, scroll down, and you will find this, this graph, and it will give you 3 line graphs. The one in the middle is for our zip code, and they also give you the one for our region. So that's the one metric that we're using. And then, Amanda, if you can go to the next slide. We're also using the region data for the positivity cases. And if you could recall, stage 3 did talk about the positivity rate being less than 5%. And the reason why I asked Amanda if we could include this graph is, the little red arrow on this graph is probably difficult to see. The little red arrow is the 5% point, and at the bottom of the screen are the dates. So again, we were under 5%, and this is when we were first initially talking to the community and the board about the hybrid plan. And our transition plan includes a plan for hybrid and a plan for remote only. And as we entered into late July, going into August, that's when we saw in region 10 that the positivity rates were going above 5%. And we just saw last Friday, when we introduced the metrics to the community, that we are now back under 5% for the region. Question coming up, why are we using, the region and not Oak Park? Well, there are a few sources of information that our safety and security manager, Jim Hackett, is looking at, in addition to the Illinois Department of Public Health, the Village of Oak Park Public Health. He's also been working with the Northern Illinois Public Health Consortium, Return to School Metrics Work Group, and the research from the Harvard Global Health Institute, along with a variety of other work groups that he's in. The thought is that this metric, because it is tied to the Illinois Restore Plan, and that plan, words are so powerful, I'm hesitant to say that, but that plan really might dictate further restrictions for the state, and it could include schools. So the thought is that we would want to keep one, if not both of these metrics tied to our region. Region 10 is all of Cook County. It does not include Chicago. So hopefully that answers some questions as to like why we're not using Oak Park metrics for both. All right, the next slide. The other question is focusing the other school districts are, now that we see that the positivity rate and the weekly cases are within the minimum less than moderate risk, why is our district not planning to return? Why have we not made any announcements? So I thought it would be prudent for me just to say, like in our planning, again, the board did approve a transition plan on August 11th. And specifically when we presented the plan to go into to use the remote only at the opening of school, we did so and asked for the first trimester. So I just pulled and captured from the board minutes from August 11th for that point. Next slide, please, Amanda. So a question, are we waiting until like we have the safety protocols to, come in? So the answer to that is an emphatic no. As I said, like our transition plan does include a plan for remote only. It includes a plan for hybrid or a blended model. We have been working with a transition team of over 100 individuals, if not more. Staff members of a variety of roles. We have also been engaged in weekly conversations, sometimes every other week, with individuals outside of the district, whether it's the folk from the public health department right here in the Village of Oak Park, a variety of social service agencies. We were meeting weekly. We're now meeting every other week. Each week, I've been meeting with my colleagues and the West 40 superintendents, because we are leading systems that, have a variety of circumstances. We may not be necessarily rolling things out, lockstep in order, but we do a lot of collaboration and sharing of ideals and resources. As well, we are all engaged in regular ongoing meetings with key leaders around COVID-19 planning. And these are just a few. Our association presidents, whether it's our teachers, teacher assistants, our buildings and grounds folk, our ESP folk, we're in regular communication with them, now meeting weekly and have been doing so for some time. And then with our PTOC and DIVCO presidents have incorporated a regular cadence of meetings now at every other week. So those are just to name a few. In addition to this, every member of my cabinet team also is engaged with collaborative work groups around the COVID-19 planning. Next slide, please, Amanda. So what has been happening in D97? Because that's a question that's come up. Next slide. So yes, we have, as I said, really under the leadership of Jim Hackett, our safety and security manager, as well as Jeannie Keene, who is our senior director of buildings and grounds. They have been leading this small team. I say small because, it's a larger team and then categories underneath. It's a large team, but it's the work group of safety and operations. So yes, we do have in place a written protocol for safety, protecting D97 health and safety requirements. It does include guiding metrics, which was released to the public last Friday. general guidelines, COVID-19 protocols, and plans to operationalize the guidelines. We are following a cadence of communication cycles so that our stakeholders all have an opportunity to have a close read, and also to be able to ask questions and help us go through a protocol to refine that document. So, but it has, I just want to re-emphasize that we have been working on written protocols as to what to follow. In addition, Mr. Hackett has conducted individualized safety walks. He should be completing those by the end of this week with each and every one of our principals. So not only will we have written protocols, but he's individualizing those protocols for each one of our buildings. As I said before, we're doing weekly conversations with our union leadership. And some of those conversations are more formal, where we will be entering into memorandums of understanding with some of those associations. So next slide. We have also been phasing in attendance since we've entered into that phase two. So we have some staff who are working in our buildings right now with some of our students. And we have in our planning beginning next week to bring in, well, early October, I would say, to bring in more students with our early childhood education classrooms. By the mid to end October, the instructional classrooms, and we have been having ongoing conversations regarding in-person support outside of the school day as we see that students need further support. Next slide, Amanda. What also has been happening is, we heard your voice very loud and clear, your concerns around your students falling behind. We take that very, very, very seriously. So some things that we have introduced this school year to prevent that learning loss for our students is we've introduced a variety of common diagnostic assessments. We have been administering those assessments even virtually. A common assessment, diagnostic assessments in non-jargony language is just we're trying to determine for every student what they know, what they are able to do in relationship with their grade level standards in literacy and also in mathematics. So those diagnostic assessments will be completed by early October, and we should be able to, at my level, the district level, and also at the school level and the grade level teams will be able to review and see like what that student learning data says, and we will be able to respond accordingly. We are very fortunate that each of our schools has a language arts specialist and MTSS interventionists. And we've actually, for some of our larger schools, larger elementary schools, have been able to, in the last few years, to add even further support in these adults. So these adults are working and providing ongoing support to those students that qualify. Middle schools have been using their advisory periods to provide the academic as well as the emotional check-in for our students. And the middle schools are also using their SOAR time to support students with their executive functioning, helping them to organize themselves between this virtual, in this virtual space. We are so fortunate to have a phenomenal, not only teaching and learning department, but under the leadership of our director of MTSS, Faith Cole. She has formed a partnership with the library and the E-team. The power of partnerships is providing virtual tutoring to our students. So again, any students that need like that extra support, in addition to D97 staff and D97 Title I tutors, we also have, I think there's a cadre of about 50 volunteers who working together with the power of partnership. So that's the library, Dominican University, under the leadership of Francis Kraft and the E-team, they are also helping our students too. And as well, I talked already about the multi-tiered systems of support. Next slide, Amanda. We know that this has been an incredibly stressful time for everyone. If you recall, in August, we delivered a survey, and that survey was administered by a third party, Hanover Research. They are administering the data results. It was called the Social Emotional Mental Health Needs Assessment Survey. The plans are to use an interactive dashboard to highlight the key findings and recommendations so that the district can act on it. And we are also planning to get together with our community and school partnerships so that they could see like what the key findings are and recommendations. And our goal is to work with our partners so that we can design activities to support not only our families and students, but also our staff as well. So in terms of next steps, Amanda, next slide. Next steps. Do you want to take the communication and community engagement slide? And then we can open up for questions.
Sure. Let me just, I'm doing one more scan of the meeting room, but I think we're good. So we were working on a number of things. I would expect that at this point we'll have weekly communication with everyone, you know, sort of sharing as much as we can each week regarding our plans. We're working on an FAQ, which was actually completed this summer when we thought we were moving into hybrid. So we're just working to update that based on the most up-to-date guidance from IDPH and ISB. This was one of the things that I think came out of an email that we received, was an inquiry about maybe having a virtual town hall on October 13th before our formal board meeting. And I believe we are moving forward with that. That will be facilitated by a third party. So that will, I think, just be another opportunity for the community to learn a little bit more about where we are and where we're going. We are also planning to work with the E-team for some more community circles. Those have been well received by the parents who have attended. So we're going to keep working with them and facilitating those for not only families, but I believe they're open to staff and students as well. We have already scheduled the next virtual superintendent copy. As Dr. Kelley said, we typically do in a normal setting have them once a month. So the next one will be October 26th from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That information will all be sent out in our newsletters. So just keep an eye out for those dates. So again, all of that will be shared with everyone. And then again, once this is all wrapped up, I'll be sending out just a short feedback form, and we'd really appreciate anything that you'd like to share just to kind of help us moving forward. That's it. So we can go ahead and jump into questions.
Yeah, so Amanda, we can stop sharing if you want, and then you'll ask the question, I answer. And here's the thing, I try to model this for the team too. I think part of being a learning organization is being comfortable with things. If I don't know an answer to a question, I'm not going to, pretend. We're going to make sure that you get your questions answered in the follow-up communication. So, but I am here. So she's going to read all of the questions. We're not picking and choosing. Amanda's going to read it. I'm going to answer it to the best of my ability. And I will also, Amanda, while you're reading, let's just take turns with admitting people into the space.
Okay, yeah, it's trickled off. So I think we should be okay. I just let someone else in. So I just wanted to say off the top, I know I got a few questions about the chat being open, really just because of the number of questions that have already come in and, me facilitating. This is really just to kind of help keep this streamlined so that I can get through all the questions. I have no problem sharing. We're not going to cherry pick or anything. The only thing I'll say, I'll read all the questions, but if we've already addressed, because I do see some redundant questions that we may cover before we get to them. So if we skip over, that would be the only reason, but I'm just gonna go straight through. And again, I'm happy to just provide like the written questions if anyone.
And then Amanda, I wonder, just to let people know that you saw it.
Yes.
You could just like maybe
yes.
say, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the first question, this is sort of a bunch of questions in one, so I'll try to just work through it one by one so we don't miss anything. Do we have an infectious disease doctor or someone with an extensive analytical background analyzing our COVID-19 data?
Um, I'm assuming they mean the metric chart. So y- yes, indirectly. So as I said previously, we are in direct conversations with Mike Charlie, and his department. They do um, review our guidelines and metrics before, and he is in contact with those individuals that have um, that background. And we all also are following the Illinois Department of Public Health guidance too.
I'll add too, I think you mentioned this, Mike Charlie is now meeting weekly on Mondays with all of the school districts and the private schools as well. And he goes over all of this stuff and all the latest procedures from IDPH. And he and I have already connected about possibly setting something up for parents. So he may be able to participate in a future event or something that we have. And I think we had someone before when we were planning. So hopefully someone from the village can kind of be there to answer questions as well.
And his department is on our transition team
Yeah.
as well.
Okay. Are we aware of the frustration from families regarding e-learning, lack of communication regarding a return to school plan? Is there a consideration to modify the plan that we outlined last week, utilizing a task force of parents, medical experts, et cetera, to develop alternative options for returning to the classroom as soon as possible?
Yes, I may have to ask you to repeat that question a
Yeah.
few times. Anecdotally, yes, I have heard from families. Honestly, anecdotally, I've heard different things from families. So for some families, yes, I definitely have heard that frustration, which is one of the reasons why we wanted like all of our schools to design a survey around the experiences so that we could have at my level, the district level, like more a fuller picture of what folk are feeling about the experiences, as well as at the school grade level for them to be able to design things that would help to support. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I'm hoping that we will have at my level what the data looks like at each of the schools by October 9th. But yes, we have heard anecdotally. I've heard anecdotally though, stories around how well it's going too. So that's why we wanted to just make sure. So please look out from your school principal for those surveys. Some of the schools may have already like delivered that survey. Each school has a positive culture and climate team. So they are the key. In some instances, it may be your building leadership team, but they are the key individuals that are pushing out the surveys regarding your remote learning experiences at that school level. And we also are, this is kind of at the end of the process, we've also been talking to or thinking about perhaps using that third party, Hanover Research, to also do some type of after action review, particularly as it relates to student learning. And did I capture everything from that question, do you think, Amanda?
You did. Um, okay. The second part of that was if there's been consideration to modify the plans outlined last week, utilizing a task force with parents and medical experts to develop alternative options for returning to the classroom as soon as possible.
I'm assuming they mean prior to trimester 1. So our team has not had any conversations regarding that prior to trimester 1. In addition to I will just say, in addition to the metrics though, there, would also be other key points that's in our, backwards design map. And because we have been planning for, through the end of trimester 1, we would have to look at some of those things, primarily around like formal agreements with different associations.
Okay. Regarding the data that is driving the current, oop,
I'm sorry. I will say again, we do have a phased-in approach, and that phased-in approach will also at some point include students that we do see the learning loss, even if they do not have an individual education plan. So, again, for us, during trimester one, we want to make sure that we're preventing learning loss. And it's not just the learning loss, but we also are looking at on the other, there are two sides of our MTSS structure, the academic, but there's also the social emotional side too. So we've been having conversations around what additional supports we could provide to students if we see that that the remote learning experience is just not working for them.
okay. So regarding the data that's driving our current approach,
Mhm.
can we please explain how the statistics outlined here differ from what we're seeing? Sorry, this question is typed. Why is District 97 behind other districts in terms of building proactive plans for a safe return? Why are we not following in other districts' footsteps, prioritizing a return to in-person instruction by coming up with creative, thoughtful innovations? Um, do That's sort of all in the same vein, I think, just regarding other districts and where we are in our process.
Right. Where we are in our process for our district, we talked about when we made the plans to do remote only, that it would be, that was a plan that would be in place for the first trimester. In terms of being proactive, I would again, I I would say perception is reality, but I would say that our teams have been planning and thinking outside of the box. Every principal has a seat at that table. Lots of various staff members are nurses. So they have been really working, as I said, around like what those safety protocols are and how to operationalize it. So I'm not sure how else to answer that question. Do you want to repeat it one more time, or do you think that I got it?
I think you covered what I kind of hear too is just, I think we will be sending out again. Like I shared, we have like right before we made the move to remote learning, I had completed, I know, a comprehensive FAQ regarding hybrid learning. We're just kind of working through that to make sure that everything's up to date because the guidance has changed since July. So we're just making sure all of that is up to date. I anticipate being able to share that information out with staff and families because I know like staff have their questions, our families have their questions, and we're planning basically over the next few weeks. Like we really want to make sure that everyone is informed and educated about the procedures that will need to take place because we know that's going to be a big change as we move back on site, not only for staff but our students and our families, and just making sure everyone knows.
And I will also say what I heard from Nurse Shanice yesterday during our meeting, Tuesday, that was yesterday, was to just re-emphasize to the community the importance of the wearing our mask, the social distancing, not having large gatherings, and really trying to avoid like large groups so that we don't see that spike. So we did see another large spike, I think Saturday, locally. But that's like one of the ways that we can keep those positivity rates down for our area. So, and we really have been and will continue to operate on faith that it will remain under that 5% for positivity rates.
Okay. Um, how are we creatively considering the needs of our youngest learners with smaller class sizes and young children struggling with remote learning? It seems time to move forward in person.
Yeah.
So especially,
So I would say the phased-in attendance is one of the things. The early childhood program would be coming back from I think the Whittier building. I know that we have had conversations with that's being led by our MTSS director. So if you're seeing that your children are really struggling, please let us know, because definitely our schools, our building principals, our MTSS interventionists, LES specialists, and even if students don't qualify for those supports, the students from Dominican, the volunteers that are here in town that have signed up and gotten training, there is a lot of support for our students. So as I was saying, we are looking at phasing in slowly for students that qualify those additional MTSS supports that would be in person. So I would just say stay tuned to hear more information from the district and teaching and learning. But we try to, before introducing it to the public, we try to make sure that we've spoken to all of our stakeholders that would be responsible for doing the work, so that they've had an opportunity to give feedback and ask questions and have a better understanding. So that should be really uh, forthcoming soon, in the next few weeks.
Looks like we have, I think these questions are like verbatim, exactly the same.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you read it aloud so people will know that you saw it?
It's the same. So is there consideration to modify the plan that you outlined last week utilizing task force? It's copy. I'm not sure if maybe there was some collaboration. That may be why they're exactly the same. So I see them, but it looks like we did cover that question. So I just want to make sure we utilizing our time. So this question is we just sort of answered this one as well, but is the district planning any prioritization between ages? Other districts are prioritizing younger children. Are there differentiated plans for kindergartners versus fifth graders?
Yeah.
We should be focused on getting K1 and 2 back before older grades.
So I'm just going to go back to some of the things, the actions that we're taking to prevent the student learning loss. By early October, we should have, each grade level team, each school team, and also the district team, we should be able to see like where students are using those common diagnostic assessments. And that information will help to inform our phased-in approach. So I would say, again, like, please stay tuned. We are really, our actions are being informed by what we're seeing from our students. And the support is really there. So I would say, like, if there are concerns that you're seeing, please let your teacher know, or, the school social worker principal. But in terms of the collective, like looking at the data collectively, yes, that's a possibility. It's just that we do not have that information yet. And the same thing regarding the remote learning experiences. Have heard anecdotally from parents, some having phenomenal, excellent experiences, and some, folk that are have been really not, and really are striving for, a change. So please, if you've seen the survey, if you can't remember if you saw it, feel free to just reach out to your building leader and say like, hey, can you direct me as to where that survey is? Because it's so important that they hear everyone's voice.
Okay. There's a question about, is this being recorded? The answer is yes.
Yes.
Says that you're answering a lot of questions that parents are talking about. This is helpful. So yes, this is being recorded. And I'm going to try to find a way, because a lot of questions have come in. So I can try to put this into some kind of written FAQ just so we can get that out to everyone.
And a part of the circle conversations that we've had preliminary discussions with is being able to do more of these formats with a variety of stakeholders, so families, staff, administrators, and smaller rooms, so that it could be more interactive than what we're doing today. But yes.
So a
And then
couple,
for those people who are just coming into the room, one of the things that we also talked about, just to mark your calendars, October 13th, we also will have a third party who will be facilitating a town hall for the D97 school community too.
okay, so both of these questions are in the same vein, wondering why planning is so last minute, other districts are far ahead, and also why has the district waited so long to resurvey parents?
So I think I'm sorry that that's the perception that we are so far behind. Once again, when we announced that we were remote only for us, um, it was announced at the board meeting where, and you can go back to the minutes for August 11th, that we would be remote only for the first trimester, watching the data. And as we saw the data consistently below certain benchmarks, that we would be planning to go into a different form. The transition plan that the board approved does include two plans. It includes a hybrid plan and it also includes a remote only plan. So I'm not sure how to answer the question about our lack of being proactive regarding the planning. Um, and what was the second part of the question?
The second question was regarding the surveys, and that would probably
The
be,
survey again, and I know that parents initially let us know as we were coming into the school year in July, they initially let us know whether or not they preferred remote only or like a blended approach, but they may have changed their minds. So it's really important for us to have the most current information. And again, just to reiterate, I guess we maybe should call it a questionnaire or information request.
yeah,
That term, that survey, the purpose of it is to find out like what parents' preferences are for when we, do go to the other plan in our transition plan, which is a hybrid approach. It's not,
yeah.
it's
I,
not, like which do you prefer?
mhm.
It's more so like when the district moves into this model, which do you want your children to participate in? That's more of like what the survey is intended.
Yeah, I think there was some confusion about that over the summer using the word survey. We really weren't asking for an opinion. We were really asking for people, and if you don't complete that questionnaire, we would move forward with putting your student in a hybrid. We would assume hybrid.
Yeah,
So it's really important, and we'll communicate that when that goes out, which I anticipate will be probably within the next week.
yeah.
We'll be
And the
working.
purpose of that information again is it would help us with the like having an understanding of how to form, classes and things of that nature. So that's why you need like the more up-to-date information.
Okay, this question was also why waiting until October to survey families, gauge sentiment on returning to school. I
Yes,
think,
so it's the sentiment of your personal family. Like, what do you want for your personal children? It's not to gauge, like the sentiment.
yeah. So this question is, how can parents answer that question of what they would like their children to do if they don't know um, what in-person learning would look like?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that when we communicate that information request or questionnaire, that it should be inclusive of, like what are the safety protocols that will be in place? What would the day, like look like? I agree that it should, and that's one of the things that we learned from the first go around. A lot of families said like, well, I'm not sure, I don't have enough information. So I do agree that it should include that information.
Yeah, yeah, we'll be working on that within the next week. Since lunch is reportedly one of our biggest obstacles. Is there any thought given to a hybrid model using half days rather than alternating 2 days a week? This is what many neighboring districts are doing to avoid the issue of lunch. This may put a strain on working families, but working families are already strained under remote learning. Could Hepzibah and Park District of Oak Park possibly adjust to provide daycare to accommodate half days?
So that question I'm not going to be able to answer because I've not been in that small team. So that's like a Jim Hackett question. And I would say that information will be coming forth. Um, and Amanda, I know that you've worked with that team, so I don't know like conversations that you've had so far. But I would say like let's just pose that question to Jim so that we can get that on a FAQ.
Yeah, yes. And I just want to acknowledge that it's 100% one of the variables that's been discussed as we're trying to work out schedules. We have a teaching and learning team, we have a calendar team, we have our safety team. Individuals from those teams have been working out and identifying the major like obstacles or things that we need to work out in order to come back. So lunch, I think for all school districts has been one of the main concerns. So we are working through that. And I think one of the things that we are doing, as was mentioned here, is we are looking at neighboring districts to see what we can learn, because some districts are going back and we can benefit from learning about how they're doing that safely. So,
and then even from the non-lunch, we're also learning from ourselves as we are bringing in, phasing in our attendance. We are learning how to like improve the process too.
yeah.
So I'm just looking at the time. We have about 6 more minutes.
Yeah. And again, I just want to say I know we're not going to be able to cover nearly all of these questions. So I will work on getting these in some kind of written FAQ so that we can get you answers. Please address specifically how we are working with our teachers union currently to actively plan for a return to school so that we don't see a repeat of the disconnect that occurred when a hybrid plan was announced in August. I think that was July, but yes.
Yeah. So a couple of things just to reiterate. The front of the building, there's this large sign that says like, we're in this together. We really are in this together. And one of the things that I am asking, pleading for your support is for us as a community to avoid the othering. So there seems to be this misperception that the reason for the hybrid to the remote was because staff members did or did not want to do certain things. We're all in this together. So, again, it was more so from our seeing the uptick in numbers. And that's like, the switch. However, in terms of like, what are we doing and to have conversations with our staff, we're meeting with our union leadership. They have been a part of our transition plan. For some of our associations, we have more formal agreements, the memorandum of understandings, and we will continue to do those things and proactively have conversations because we can't do this work without them. We can't do this work without you. And it's really like all of us working together in this global pandemic. So I just really want to emphasize that like where we're seated is not because of one person or another group or, but it's we're all in this together.
This question is, why don't we have a task force like other districts?
So there are a variety of, when I talk to my colleagues in River Forest, there's a task force that's more, a border. Here in our district, our task force primarily has been the individual, like stakeholders, individuals that are either in district and also the governmental agencies that are in the Village of Oak Park, District 200. It just really varies on your culture and how you've done the work. We have heard, though, that people feel that they've not had like a voice. That's one of the reasons why we're going to do the town hall October 13th. One of the reasons why we're looking at the circles, so that more stakeholders feel that they have had a voice, that they're hearing about the ongoing planning, and you don't feel that you're sitting out there in a vacuum. But I think that, because every district is different, our culture is very different. I think that people are doing like what has worked for them in the past. One key learning that we have gotten out of this experience is we definitely don't want any of our stakeholders to feel as if they're like in a vacuum somewhere and not informed by the planning that's happening. So that's one of the reasons why we want to try to do the circles, as well as bringing people together in circles. Different stakeholder roles will allow us to see that, allow us to prevent the othering that may occur during these stressful times. And 2 more minutes, Amanda.
Okay. There are a few questions regarding our, like all in a row, regarding our safety and security manager and his expertise in terms of tracking and analyzing COVID data, and if we are consulting with medical and public health experts. Dr. Kelley, I know you mentioned some of that. Because I responded in an email to someone about this yesterday, hopefully you don't mind, I'm going to jump in and just, one of the things that I wanted to share in terms of, so we have been working with the village and consulting. Jim has done a lot of consulting with outside experts as he's been doing this, and he's not the only one doing this work, but he personally has been in contact, I know, with a number of medical experts, including administrators from Rush Hospital. That has been part of his process, I would say, since the spring. So we are getting that outside input from external agencies through those conversations. I'm sorry, Dr. Kelley, didn't mean to.
That's okay, that's fine. So I'm just going to summarize, just because I want to, just looking at the time, for those people who came in late. So October 13th, we are looking at a virtual town hall that's going to be facilitated by a third party. We're hoping to host a series of community circles for our staff, parents, and administrators. The next Superintendent Community Cafe will be held on October 26th. It will also be virtual from 6 to 7 p.m. We'll follow up with the FAQ email to answer that one question I was unable to answer, and then any questions that that were not duplicates of things that are not previously on this recording. So thank you again so much for coming today. Amanda, you did a phenomenal job with hosting and coordinating. Thank you again.